All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Zach Sadiq. I am the Disability Systems Navigation Coordinator over at the ARC of King County. I'm autistic. I'm a social worker, a community organizer, and activist. And I am just again, so glad to see so many people here. One of the missions, the overall goal of the ARC of King County is to further the civil rights movement for all people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, so we can be thrived as equal, valued, and active members of the community. And oftentimes, those of us who have disabilities can tell you that that does not always happen. We are not always seen as equal members of the community. And for autistic folks, especially those who might have an intellectual disability or be non-speaking, oftentimes their own personhood and autonomy is not necessarily seen as important. And so in terms of like looking at, frameworks and principles we can follow to end some of that harm. One of, the best movements I work under is the disability justice movement. And the disability justice movement does not see disability only as a single issue. It looks at, the person's whole life, all of their identities, whether they be, you know, whether they have a physical disability, an intellectual disability, whether they be black, white, or brown. And, it looks at, in addition to like the interpersonal things that have happened to you to, create oppressive circumstances, like what are the systemic roots of, these oppressive circumstances, and how can these systemic roots be changed. What disability justice really improved on from the disability rights movement is its focus on intersectionality, and also its focus on leadership of the most impacted. In terms of thinking of leadership of the most impacted, a quote from Aurora Levins Morales is that we are led by those who most know the systems, in addition to that meaning the folks who are, supported by the systems. It also means the people who, face the most marginalization and oppression on a daily basis. And so, thinking back to, non-speaking autistic folks, oftentimes, the fact that they are non-speaking is used as justification to remove their autonomy and personhood, and for the right of other people to speak for them and decide what's best for them. And recently, over the past several years, there have been many non-speaking autistic activists who are really starting to challenge that dominant paradigm and belief. And in terms of thinking of like leadership of the most impacted, like they are the ones who really need to be listened to. They're the ones who need to be telling the stories to, really create important systemic reform. And, so much of that can happen through events like this. So, that's why I'm so glad to see so many people here. And the fact that we had over 500 people register in less than a week is just really, really amazing. So in terms of thinking about who is here, about 58% of folks are professionals, 20% are parents, 18% are autistic themselves, and 6% are family members. And for those of you who have been adding up the math in your head and realize that adds up to 109%, some people fall within multiple roles. So before we jump to the panelists really quick, I just wanted to cover a few housekeeping things. So the panelists are going to go through questions that were synthesized from what we received from the audience, and they'll be doing that from now to about 8:10. Over the course of the panel, if you have any questions you want the panelists to answer, please type them in chat, and one of the folks from the ARC of King County will be copying that, and they will help us ask the questions later on. I wanted to thank Eric, Francis, Wesley, and Kaylee for helping out with organizing this panel. I wanted to thank Kate for providing the volunteer closed captioning. For those of you who need captioning, you can just click the live transcript button on the very bottom of the Zoom panel, and you will see words appear on your screen. That is what the people are saying. And then let's see what else. If you're having any technical problems and need assistance with that, please send a message to Wesley. Wesley, can you unmute and wave so people will know it's you?
Hi, that's me, your tech person.
Okay, cool. Hi, Wesley. Thank you so much for being our tech person. Cool. All right. Well, I guess now is as good as any time to begin. So I just wanted to say welcome to all of the panelists. They are going to introduce themselves in the first question, which is, tell us about yourself. What are the kinds of things you do every day? And so, Grant, do you want to start us off? I believe Grant has a video to share with us, so he'll be sharing the screen.
It's not on the right screen yet.
It's going to go. That's okay. Turn your volume up. Are you off mute?
Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone, my name is Grant Blasco and I am 18. As you can probably already tell, I use assistive technology rather than my voice to talk. I was diagnosed at age 2 with autism, and that means that I have been in this club for 16 years. The fact that I can't talk at this point might make others have immediate assumptions about my potential, but I am focused on changing those biased opinions about me and about others too. Today, I am a student, dual enrolled in running start at Bellevue High School and Bellevue College here in the Seattle area. I am also a DOIT scholar at the University of Washington, which is a long-standing 3-year mentoring program for college-bound teens with a wide range of disabilities. I have already been an advocate for autism, and especially for those with communication challenges, for many years. I am proud of my work with TASH in Communication First, where I have had an opportunity to stand up for what I believe needs to improve for the benefit of autistic individuals. Currently, I am co-designing a course to discuss UTL support for AAC users in schools, and I am working on a few projects that outline executive function education needs for AAC users. What else? I moved out west in 2017 from the Washington, D.C. area, where I had lived from the time I was born until halfway through 8th grade. I still think of the D.C. area as my home, and I have hopes to go back someday. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I have a sister named Devin, who is 16, and a brother, Scott, who is 14. My out-of-school interests span from high energy to quiet, reflective activities, depending on my day and the people around me, but I always enjoy hiking, museums, music, dining out, and deep conversation. And I love coffee, so I guess it is a good thing that I ended up in Seattle. I also enjoy skiing, and I love travel. Conferences are some of my best opportunities to catch up with friends from all over the country that I've met through the disability and autism communities. Since COVID began, my life has been a bit boring in many ways, LOL, but I am really happy to be here tonight, and it is cool to see all the familiar names on our sign-up sheet. I miss seeing you all so much.
Thank you so much, Grant. That was a really great introduction, and I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about what you have to say, so thank you. Okay, so next we have DJ to do his introduction. Hello, DJ.
Hi, everyone. I'm a publishing writer, artful activist, public scholar, and practicing optimist. As a poet and writer, I am currently collaborating with artist Malcolm Corley and fellow poets, Claretta Halsey, Lateef McLeod, and Joriel Watkins on a book of poetry and visual art forthcoming from Prompt Press in fall 2021. As a public scholar, I teach and present nationally on a range of topics and am currently revising an autoethnographic study entitled Unearthing the Tools and Concepts That Bury Us, that is forthcoming in a scholarly anthology in fall 2021. And am starting a collaboration with my dad on life writing across genres. I am also going to be co-teaching some poetry workshops this spring. As a working board member of the Alliance for Citizen-Directed Support, I am spearheading a project entitled Lives in Progress. The project will include an interactive national map that will document diverse paths to meaningful, self-directed lives, allowing people to search for resources, identify practical approaches, and find lived examples and mentors by geographic location, interests, talents, and vocations. I also serve on the Neuroclastics board and am on the advisory board for Communication First. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I am a practicing optimist who lives life as a meditation on hope. I make time every week to connect with friends I know from college and others I've met virtually since the pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, DJ. I was a huge fan of your documentary, and I really enjoyed what you said about the importance of self-directed supports. I think that is such an important concept, especially for non-speaking autistic people who often don't have the right to self-directed supports for so many reasons. And we'll explore that a little more later in the panel. So last but certainly not least, we have Celeste Pena, and she will introduce herself. Hello, Celeste.
Hi, I'm Celeste Pena. I'm an autistic self-advocate, and I'm a mother. So my son is non-speaking. He's going to be 5 this year. And my husband and I are what some would call unreliably selective mutism, unreliably speaking. But most of the time, I'm okay. Sometimes it depends on how overwhelmed we are. I'm here to talk just a little bit about my experience as a parent, because a lot of times I think people think there's this sort of like dichotomy between what parents think and what autistic people think, and this dichotomy between what non-speaking autistics needs and what speaking autistic needs, when there's a blur between all of those things, because I'm a parent and I'm autistic, and I most of the time can get my words out, but when it really matters, like when the cops are coming to me, I cannot, and so I get arrested. So I'm here to talk mostly about my experience as a mom, mostly just as to be here in awe of Grant and DJ, and to think it's awesome just to be on a panel with them. So that is all, I think, for the introduction. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Celeste. And I'm sure they're thinking it's also awesome to be on a panel with you as well. I think your point about sort of like the autistic experience being fluid is a really important one. So many times, like autistic people are just put in these little boxes, like high functioning or low functioning, like speaking, non-speaking. And, just with the stress and, like experiences with autistic burnout, for example, or, just sort of like the mental exhaustion that comes from, masking, like oftentimes, yeah, I do go nonverbal in my own life as well. And people don't necessarily realize that, and I think it has such a huge impact on like how the systems are developed and delivered, and who's seen as like deserving of supports, and who's seen as deserving of, you know, autonomy and the right to make their own choices. So, you know, thinking about those frames, we'll jump to the next question, and it's, how do you feel about the way that autism is talked about and framed in the world? You know, how do you feel about the high functioning / low functioning, or, you know, mild, severe, or like spicy dichotomies? And how has it impacted you in your own life personally? Or, you know, for you, Celeste, like how has it impacted your son as well? So we'll jump to Grant first. Hi, Grant.
Ready? Okay, I think we're back.
You are. Welcome back.
We're going to share again.
Well, you can share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that they can read it as they hear it.
Desktop 2.
Can you see the text?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
You are screen sharing. You are screen sharing.
That is not helpful.
What are you doing?
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Because I can't make it speak apparently with Zoom at the same time. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. It wouldn't be a virtual panel without at least 40 different tech problems.
Right. So it will be captioned at some point.
Yeah, it will.
I'd like to start by acknowledging how we got here tonight. When Zach reached out to me, I was ready to do whatever he asked. He's been a great liaison for me in the Seattle area and has pulled me into discussions where I might not have otherwise had an invitation. To say he has been an ally is an understatement. In this past year, equity discussions seem to permeate every topic, and so I have been hopeful. However, it makes me sad to see the turmoil among the voices in the autism community, so my goal today is to share my experience, and I hope that the conversation that results is positive. As a non-speaking autistic with what most would describe as high support needs, I can say that it is rare to hear autism depicted how I would like it to be seen. I do not like the terms mild or severe, or high or low functioning, but I can acknowledge that there are differences in experience. My communication disability affects every single aspect of my day. My coping behaviors also create barriers for me. I have gone through very dark stages several times during my life, so I can relate easily to people in crisis. People who get to know me think I am beyond this, but the truth is I am constantly aware of stereotypes associated with non-speakers like me who struggle to mask the effects of autism. In every interaction, I feel both a responsibility to not only win over people to get my own needs met, but to advocate for others as well. It is a lot of pressure to feel day after day, and there is no research I am aware of that follows this kind of strain on mental health. I can count on scrutiny and controversy everywhere I go, and it weighs on me. I should not be concerned with these opinions, but I am, because their rhetoric makes me feel less safe in every setting. If I don't speak up, I won't be safe going forward either. Neurodiversity and disability acceptance is important, and I have so much respect for the movement. I also believe in educating and collaborating. That is why I have pushed myself to speak up. So there comes a day when I feel safer to be in the community. Autism is a wide spectrum of people, it is true. But I think what I want to make sure I say is that we all deserve a voice and respect, even if we cannot directly say it yet on our own. That said, I find it exhausting to constantly have to correct misinformation coming from many different directions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really relate to a lot of what you said. Like so often, you know, people don't realize, you know, like they see the autism, sure, but they also don't see like, you know, the trauma or like the mental health struggles that we have to go through because, you know, essentially where we as autistic or disabled people are forced to exist in, these boxes that like society creates for us when we might not necessarily fit in well to those boxes. And it really brings to mind, like first the concept of like masking for autistic people. It also brings to mind for me like, what my Black and brown friends and colleagues have said about code switching, where they got to exist in a certain way in front of white people, and then just the sheer like emotional exhaustion that comes from that. So it's a really important reminder of like how all the forms of oppression and marginalization are very similar and connected into so many different ways. And it's definitely something I'm sure we're going to talk about a little more later in the panel. So thank you. DJ, what are your thoughts on this question? All right, I'm going to spotlight you, DJ.
I'm not a big fan of binaries. My least favorite is verbal and nonverbal. I think people use it to desert hope for non-speaking people. It's part of the idea of a spectrum or of a weeding out classification. And it's unjust because it's segregating non-speaking people into classrooms of easy lessons. It hasn't impacted what I've been able to achieve, but it has impacted how I'm perceived daily on the streets. I've traveled across the country giving presentations, film screenings, and teaching classes, and I've rarely seen another alternatively communicating person out and about in the world with me. And because of that, I find some people look at me as if I shouldn't be allowed out. I think the more we insist on being out and about, the more others' ignorance about us will subside. I've been trying wherever I go to make a point of asking people to stop using nonverbal and to refer to us as non-traditionally speaking and alternatively communicating. And it's really starting to catch on. Someone in the audience asked what is one of the things that parents and professionals need to do to support non-speaking autistics. This is something everyone can start doing today.
Awesome, thank you. What you said about, having to walk through the street and dealing with other people's perceptions, like really like ties directly to something Grant and I were talking about earlier today, where, if you were to go, to Starbucks and like order like a vanilla latte, like people would be judging his competency and, his ability to do that. And it's sort of an example where, oppression, exists as restricting your ability to move throughout the world and make the choices that like non-disabled people can take, on a like daily basis without, essentially realizing it's something that not everyone is able to take for granted, whether they be, disabled or a person of color or who might have another marginalized identity. So yeah, really glad you brought that up. Celeste, I saw you nodding a lot to, what DJ and Grant were saying. Do you have similar thoughts?
Some of this stuff, to be honest, was things that even I thought before I had a child and before he was the first person I knew who was non-speaking. Because autistics, even we ourselves will stay cliquey and just be with who we know. So it's a lot of things that I didn't even fully understand. I thought that autism spectrum did mean low and high functioning. I thought it meant that some people are more or less. It wasn't until I married someone who was autistic and now we have an autistic child that I realized that no, we are all very autistic. It just presents in such different ways. For me, I can't regulate my emotions. I can't tell when I have to go to the bathroom. I don't know when I'm hungry. My child, for him, it's motor planning, and he can't always pick what he wants to pick, and he can't always, do what he wants to do physically, and he has to use an AAC device. And for my husband, it's social skills. So because of those things, I can't hold a job. So people will say that I'm high functioning because here I'm talking to you, but I can't get hired. I can't hold a job. I can't keep a job. I can't get promoted. I can't go more than 2 days without a meltdown. So what is what is this? Like, it almost seems like I said, a false dichotomy that really just has to do with, well, what do you look to me for 5 seconds? Like, if I just look at you really quick, what does it seem like you can do? And that is just so wrong, because I can't do a lot of the things that people expect me to do, and my son can do so many more things than people expect him to be able to do. And it's one of those things too, where it's like a lot of people look at my son and see that he's disabled because he's little, and they see that he's acting different. But as he gets older, as a young boy of color, it starts to look different too, where at some point they just think that he's on drugs, or that he's acting crazy, or that he's acting violent, and that they need to call the police on him, because, and he can't tell them anything different. He can't, unless they want to take the time for him to spell it out on his AAC device, which at this young age he can't do yet. It's just a lot. It's something that that literally is killing us. It's making people who supposedly seem high functioning end up having a pressure where they kill themselves, and people who are low functioning have no autonomy and they're being killed. People are restraining them or calling the cops on them or doing it. It's just killing us, having these false ideas and labels.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Thinking about, the intersection between like autism and race, like autistic students of color in special ed are so much more likely to be like suspended or like sent to jail through this, special education through prison pipeline. And yeah, you're right. It's absolutely deadly in so many ways that these labels and, like false dichotomies are put on us. And yeah, one of the hardest things about, advocacy is getting people to move past their defensiveness and realize this. Yeah, but I'm so glad y'all are here speaking the truth, talking about this. So thank you. Yeah, and I want to point out something that Jen St. Cyr said in the comments. I feel like functioning labels essentially mean how inconvenient is my autism to the neurotypicals. And yeah, that's absolutely real. I think high functioning / low functioning is really just an indicator of like how much does your autism inconvenience like me as a non-disabled person. So yeah. So yeah, thank you all for saying what you've said so far. This has been great. So the next question we have is, how has the framing and societal of perceptions impacted the services you have received in your life? Do you feel like there's any services or opportunities you did not get because of, these framings? Grant, what are you thinking?
I don't know what is wrong.
Oh, is the AAC not working?
Yeah.
Okay.
The framing of autism as a deficit model definitely impacted my early life. And yes, the biggest service I did not get was access to inclusive education with my peers until 5th grade because of the perception that I needed to be treated very differently. I was not born with the same neurology as a typical person, and my experiences of toxic stress from trying to mimic typical behavior left me with PTSD responses to everyday exposures most people don't even notice. Over a long journey, I have done a lot of work to figure out compensatory strategies so that I can participate in life to the best of my ability, and I expect that I will continue to improve, but only if the supports I need are available, and that includes a better understanding from professionals of what constitutes trauma and re-traumatization.
Yeah, that's important. I have seen, like, I've not really seen trauma really talked about at all within many of the treatment settings that serve autistic people around here. And it's in such contrast to like all the other mental health facilities. And yeah, I would really be interested to know like why that is. Maybe it has something to do with the perception that, yeah, we as autistic people just can't be traumatized, or I don't know what. It's interesting though. DJ, what are you thinking?
I can't say I've been denied any services, but I hear it daily from those who have been. I was fully included from kindergarten through college graduation with school-funded classroom assistance, and I was able to access AAC devices as I was growing up. My only complaint is that I should be able to access the same supports as a gainfully self-employed person that I received as a student. I did receive the support assistance I needed from Open Society Foundations during my post-college fellowship, but since that ended in 2019, I've been responsible for my own support assistance. The UN's Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities calls on every country to offer us the assistive technology needed to actively participate in every aspect of life, political, economic, educational, and social. It acknowledges that assistive technology needn't be something fancy to work. It's these kinds of documents that are needed to ensure our human rights are preserved. I encourage people to join organizations like the Alliance for Citizen-Directed Support and Communication First, who are disability-led organizations, actively fighting for our rights to self-determined, meaningfully engaged, self-efficacious lives.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad you mentioned Communication First. They recently released a video that was addressing the representation issue that autistic people were raising against Sia, who is a well-known Australian artist who essentially appropriated, you know, autistic people and the autistic identity for use in one of her movies, and did not, you know, she did not represent autistic people at all. So the short film called Listen has just been posted in chat. So if folks have, you know, a chance, I would definitely encourage y'all to watch it. It's very important. And, you know, DJ, I'm glad that you didn't have your, you know, your options restricted. That is, you know, refreshing and rare to hear. You know, definitely in contrast to what Grant was going through. But it's good to know, you know, sometimes things can still work. But I think it's important to reflect on, you know, what actually, you know, makes all of that happen, what makes inclusion happen, and why isn't it happening for, you know, many autistic folks right now. So thank you. Celeste, what are you thinking right now?
I guess the only thing that I would add is that the framing and the societal perception of autism sort of dictates the way that services are distributed. Because, like my son, when we apply for DDA, we're always encouraged to explain him as having the most deficits. If he can ever pee in the toilet, don't tell DDA that. He never pees in the toilet. If he ever makes a babbling sound, don't tell DDA that. Just make it so that he has the most deficits possible so that you get the most services possible. School's set up the same way. So it's sort of like we have to play in an oppression Olympics with our kids to get them any sort of services, which puts parents in the mindset that this is who my kid is. This is all they can do. This is it. They think that because they need the services, they are only these deficits. They can't see that because they need these services, they will then have these strengths, instead of it's just not set up to put us in that mindset. And that's all tied together and just the way the perceptions are.
Yeah, definitely. That's so real. And then even thinking about, like getting diagnosed with autism, for example, like essentially, the DSM is very deficit based. And, for many of us, like we're spending so much time like masking our autistic traits and symptoms that like if we were to do that, when, getting evaluated as adults, like we wouldn't get those services, you know, in much part because like the diagnostic criteria assumes that like, like it assigns essentially like not a binary, but like level 1, 2, and 3, and assumes like it's not really going to be, someone wouldn't be moving between those different levels. And then, thinking about having to get services from DDA, like that must be like such a demeaning process to, have to, make yourself seem as incapable as possible. And in many ways, like that's something that the state then uses to justify like the lack of, personhood and autonomy and, self-directed supports that are available to autistic people. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting thought there. Yeah, well, thank you all so much. So the next question we have, and it's a long one, so bear with me. If an autistic person is not able to speak with their mouth parts, it's often assumed that it means they're not able to think or to understand the world around them and make decisions for themselves. Yet several of you are capable of communicating in ways other than speaking. And so what I'm wondering is like, what's happened that makes you capable of doing so? Or, why is that when, like so many other autistic people are thought of as not being able to do so? Is it like a matter of the environment you've, existed in and the supports you've been able to receive? Is it something to do with biology? And, thinking about something, Kedar wrote, where he was in a classroom, teachers couldn't understand him and, he couldn't communicate in a way the teachers could understand. He looked around and saw, many other autistic people in the classroom going through the same experience. And so I'm also wondering, like, is that, do you see other like non-speaking autistic people going through that? Does that make sense? All right, and looks like Grant will answer that first. I am spotlighting him.
It's so funny. All right, hold on. Why do we have this problem every time?
And I see in the chat, someone didn't understand the question, and I do apologize. It was very long-winded. It's basically asking, like, why are you, the panelists, like able to communicate through AAC in other ways when so many other autistic people can't? And, how many autistic people do you think haven't necessarily been given the right supports to be able to communicate in the way you have?
Okay, Zach, I think we're ready.
The
Awesome.
first of that question is why I always agree to talk to audiences. We need to get over the idea that you can look at a person and guess their level of understanding, or that you do an assessment without first building a trusting relationship. We need to start the narrative of constant curiosity instead. Everyone is different. Each autistic person is different with their own unique challenges, but I definitely think there are many non-speakers who are underestimated. The reason I was successful is multifactorial. What I needed was respect for what was hard for me and the coaching to get through it. I spent a lot of time feeling bad about myself because I could not pull it together. You need the right environment, which includes people with the right mindsets and the right training who can remain curious. Communication partners need to think about support in a more holistic way. They need an understanding of how to lower stress and co-regulate with a student who may be in fight or flight most of the time. They need to learn how to spot problems and dynamically change gears. At the same time, they give good feedback. like a coach would. They need to focus on the relationship. My early interventions focused on quick responses, which increased my anxiety and added to the performance problem I was already dealing with. So for a while, I was very resistant to trying. I was the kid who ran away from my device because it was too painful to fail anymore. I had so many bad habits, but with empathy and coaching, I got better at everything. With the right trained supports, I think many autistic non-speakers may be able to make progress. I was also fortunate to meet older AAC users when I did. I didn't know about non-speaking advocates until I was 10, and meeting them opened up my mind to the possibility of what I could do. That model of someone more like me meant so much. Why isn't this a regular part of intervention? We also need to think about why there is no disability in autistic culture in schools. I do my best to fit into typical environments, but my sociology class has helped me to articulate that the lack of signs of my culture in everyday settings caused me a lot of stress. My communication efforts were not a miracle or a quick fix as some would suggest. It took me years of hard work, literally thousands and thousands of hours, to get to a point where I can type independently. It required massive commitment from my family, particularly my mom, along with dozens of other people who have helped me build the necessary skills. This is a journey that is very hard, and not every non-speaker is given the opportunity. I am very grateful for the people that helped me, but I am sad for others who have not had the same opportunity. I just spoke to a group of SLPs not too long ago. They were surprised when I told them how stressful it is to be an AAC user. I was blown away that it was news, but encouraged that they were willing to think about things differently. Overall, I don't think many professionals really understand how many sensory, attention, and intentional movement skills all need to be coming together to produce effective communicative interactions. When you use an AAC device, you are actually doing dozens of executive function skills at the same time. What I can say is that to pay attention to every one of the skills that may be affected by dyspraxia is exhausting. Dyspraxia affects a lot more than just whether or not I can walk without tripping or point properly. I'll stop here, but I am happy to share more later.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely an amazing answer, and it's given me, so much to think about. It connects to mind the concept of invalidation trauma, which was written about in a book called Trauma, Stigma, and Autism. And it's essentially, like I've experienced it in my own life, where I'm so afraid of failure, I'm so afraid of being judged, that I just won't do things that I might fail in and have to deal with, like, public shame and ridicule. And so, yeah, like I'd never thought about, before, like non-speakers experiencing that when trying to learn, how to communicate using AAC. And I think it's critical that, like SLPs or other, professionals working with AAC realize that, and just realize, like, even if someone can't communicate with their words, like they're still under this enormous pressure and just like this expectation to be able to perform in this certain way, like whether it be verbal communication or learning how to type to communicate. And I think, yeah, we definitely need to give non-speakers a lot more grace when going through that. And then also the idea of, dyspraxia, like maybe SLPs would, or occupational therapists would understand what that means, but like teachers or, like behaviorists or, like social workers working with autistic kids, like for a lot of them, they wouldn't even consider that, like, the fact that your brain can't necessarily communicate to your body like how to move and how to act like impacts you, like, and I think there definitely needs to be more awareness of that. So I'm so glad you really brought all of that up. And then also, yeah, the idea, like if you're the only non-speaker, you've never met any older ones, it's so easy to just see a future like filled with like failure and not being able to perform and not knowing, like, what does success look like? What do I have to look forward to? So I think it is critical we connect, non-speaking adults with non-speaking children. Like, yeah, that thank you so much. That answer has given me so much to think about. DJ, I'm also excited to hear what you have to say.
I've been a multimodal communicator since I was 5. I was fully included, and everyone needed a way to answer questions in class. I was taught to read and write by my teachers at school, and I was able to get more and more adept at responding. I was taught to communicate by everyone in my life throughout my entire day. Someone in the audience asked, "What are your preferred modes of communication, and does it change depending on place, time, people you are with?" The website for my film describes me as someone who uses a text-to-speech synthesizer to communicate. Yet, in truth, I, and so many of my peers, use a number of tools. Augmentative communication devices, computers with text-to-speech software, our own vocal cords, written language, letterboards, emails, video chats, G-chats, signs, gestures, objects, body movements, pointing, pictures, borrowing others' voices, by choice or by circumstance, even poetry and its oil paint animation in the film. During my speech at the UN, I advocated for multimodal communication. We need multimodal communication to allow for maximum flexibility and accessibility. If high-tech options were my only means of communication, I wouldn't be where I am today. When I was little, I used lots of food labels and photos to tell people what I wanted, to understand my choices, and to comprehend where I was going and what we were about to eat. I use manual sign language to convey my essential commands. Things like, "I need to use the bathroom. Please stop. Go. I'm done. I need a break. I need something to eat or to drink or more of something." I would never use my assistive technology to quickly tell someone I need to use the bathroom, but often people expect non-speakers to use it first for mundane commands. I think it's not practical as the place to start. We need communication to build relationships. It's those connections that make us thrive. It is this multimodal, rhizomatic approach to communicating, one that reaches out and up, that allows us to thrive and avoid isolation in a world that seeks to contain so-called non-speaking people. Millions of people currently remain unnecessarily misunderstood. I am hopeful to see how many of our audience members are here today wanting to know how they can do better to support alternative communication, and I commend Zach and the Arc of King County for sponsoring tonight's event. If you're interested in learning more about practical ideas that help, please check out my listentous.net website and tell me what I can do to support you.
That's a very kind offer, DJ, and I'll make sure that that website is posted in the chat for people to access. Yeah, and multimodal communication does seem so important to think about and use. I never really realized myself that all of the different types of communication takes a different amount of energy to use, and that you'd be more likely to use one over the other in specific situations. And I guess it does tie back to what Celeste was saying earlier about the autistic experience being fluid, even for non-speaking autistic folks, just the strain of communicating and just trying to get through the day means that you won't always have the energy to type your words out, and you'll need to use and that those around you will have to be flexible and be able to adapt to that. And definitely thinking about, you know, what I've heard from parents of non-speaking autistic children, like they often just try like one or two methods at the same time, or just one method at a single time, and they don't really like use multiple simultaneously for a variety of reasons. And I think that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And I think parents and families definitely need to be supported through that process. And I think it points to the reason why it's so important to have like non-speakers like working in the early intervention settings, or like all of the places that serve autistic people. Like that's a huge, I think, systemic change that really needs to happen. So thank you, DJ, for providing that answer and, you know, really helping enhance my and the audience insight on that. That's amazing. Awesome. So Celeste, I know we've spoken about this before a little, and I know you'll have a lot of good things to say.
Yeah, basically just that we live in, I mean, oralism is a real thing. We live in a society that says that mouth words are more important than any other way of speaking. It's not, and it's not just, you know, kids like mine. It's also like there's deaf kids out there who are denied sign language because people think that they need to read lips and they need to learn how to vocalize because that's more important. That's how they'll be successful. I also grew up on the border with parents who spoke Spanish, grandparents who spoke absolutely no English. So it's something where if you're just not speaking in the way that the dominant people around you are speaking, they assume that you don't understand anything at all. Like a lot of people, my grandparents didn't speak any English, so people just didn't assume that they also didn't understand any English. And would also assume because they didn't understand any English, that they didn't understand anything. It's something that just happens in the society to all kinds of people, that if you are not speaking, and not just speaking English, but speaking English with the proper grammar, the proper cadence, and in a way that makes people feel very comfortable, then they're just going to shut you down. And they'll always say that it's for your benefit, that it's because that's, otherwise, how will you be successful if you can't do what could possibly be painful? Like in a lot of ways, it is very tiring. It's something that you don't understand unless you deal with. Maybe if you speak more than one language, if you've ever had to translate something that isn't your natural language, think about the mental energy that takes. Could you do that all day? Could you always perform at your best? Like there's a reason that humans don't run everywhere, because it's exhausting. We can't always do the thing that's the hardest to do. And that's something that people expect of autistics all the time. Non-speaking autistics, you have to always use your AAC device. You can't use gestures, even though everyone else in the world uses gestures. Everyone else does it, but AAC users, you have to say it on your talker. And then it's just one of those things that has, in the end, comes down to like us being a white supremacist, ableist, crappy society that thinks that one way is better than other ways.
Yeah, that's definitely real. Like it's all connected in so many ways, like language access, be it you know, like to access to AAC, or access to, you know, like inclusive settings. If your English isn't your first language, is, yeah, it's interesting. It's similar. And then if I can ask, you know, with your experiences of trying to get like AAC or support for your son, like, have you found that folks are like,
I had to push to get, my son was diagnosed as autistic at a couple months after he turned 1, and then we got his AAC device before he turned 2. And I had to really push for it. Part of it is that I did go to college for a little while, and I have a background in education. So a lot of it is like I had to have the right lingo, and you had to talk to the right people in the right way, and bring up the right research articles, and push and then get my insurance to pay for it. And it's crazy because once he got it, I realized like he was the youngest AAC user I knew. Me trying to find other people whose kids were his age, and now he's been using it for almost 3 years. And he's still one of the youngest AAC users I know, because most kids don't get access to it until they're in like school, like when they start kindergarten or something, which is why would we deny anyone a language? Like it is a terrible, terrible thing. It's something that happened to me when I grew up. Like I grew up in Arizona, so they wouldn't let us speak Spanish. It didn't help everyone speak English. Not everyone in Arizona speaks immaculate English. All it did was make a bunch of us lose our Spanish and lose any sort of like pride that we had in ourselves. That's what it does.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about there. And one last quick question based on your answer. Like, did you feel that the, folks you worked with were like able to help you like work with your son at home, or were they like not really able to support you in that area around like AAC implementation and usage?
I had to fire a couple SLPs before I found one.
Yeah. Dang. And the fact that like you're someone with all the like education and knowledge, and you still had to like fight through, fight the system to get what you needed, and that it was still a struggle. I think, what does it mean for those who don't have that, cultural capital to know like what to ask for? If they have a non-speaking kid and the first thing they're told is, no, we can't get that for you for, insurance reasons, like, well, then that might have just cut off, their kids like access to any sort of, communication. And so, yeah, a lot of
And that's
systemic
what
change.
mostly happens to families of color. That happens to families of color all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's important to point that out. Thank you. All right. Well, I'm really loving the answers so far. And I'm actually genuinely shocked that we're running on time. Like, with any panel of autistic people, that almost never happens. So this is great. So we will jump to the next question, which is, it's really thinking about the like what needs to change. So the question is like, what kind of change do you want to make in the world? What kind of change needs to be made to make it easier for you to exist in the world the way you want to exist? What should speaking autistic people or non-autistic people do to make that happen, in terms of like thinking about, allyship or accomplishment? So thank you. Grant, when you're ready.
I want to work on pushing for trauma-informed communication supports, but another topic I need to talk about is UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. This past summer, I was able to present with Michael McSheehan at the 2020 CAST UDL Summer Symposium, and that has been a mission for me. As an AAC user, I have had access to elementary, middle, and high schools in 2 states, and now I am taking college classes. When universal design for learning is in place, it gives me the greatest chance to feel like just another student trying to effectively learn, choosing my preferences from all of the available class supports. What I like to say is that I am an expert learner, the moment the barriers to access are removed. Last year, I shared my suggested slogan for UDL at an autism conference. It was, "Give the kids a break." So, what do I mean by that? Really, it is all about decreasing threats that make a marginalized student feel more vulnerable in the environment. Prepare for a student to be in your class. Think about what it would be like to endure a day without a voice, and think about how many different ways your curriculum might be causing stress without intending to do so. I am welcomed into classes, but that does not mean they were designed for me, or that a teacher is ready for me. Here's what might happen. A lesson might have objectives, activities, and assignments that never consider how I will do any of that work. The materials may not be digital, so that means I might not be able to increase the font size or use my text-to-speech accommodation. The worksheets may be on paper or a scanned picture of a document, which means that someone will need to create the document just for me. The activity may call for a small group discussion over just a couple of minutes. I only type 11 words per minute, so I am supposed to get questions ahead, but that doesn't happen every day, so I do the best I can. but it is stressful. In universally designed lessons, so many of these stressors would be removed. That's what I want to make sure I talk about. Paraeducators and teachers who support students who have communication challenges can move mountains, but the work should be distributed. When general education teachers didn't really know all the ways I was running into barriers, then they couldn't improve at including more kids like me. My heart breaks when I walk into a class and realize nobody thought about how I would participate ahead of time, and when I am sad, I have a much harder time staying calm and attentive. The paraeducator with me will now have to scramble, and everyone sees all the effort, so I won't look competent to many people today. It is another day where my membership depends on people being nice, rather than on the value I bring to the community when I am given access that allows my strengths to be visible to my peers. So, you can see this is hard, but we have made really good progress. At this point, I'd like to share how my team and I have addressed some of my barriers.
Zach, I think he's going to wait. Unless you want us to keep going.
Feel free to keep going if you want.
This one was long.
Here are a few examples of things I shared. If you need to ask a question at the start of class, make it an easy one. When I walk into class, even if it is online, my body is already primed for apprehension. This has nothing to do with whether or not I like the subject or the teacher, it is just a nervous reaction. I calm down once I get into the flow, but if you start off with a big question about all my prior learning and put me on the spot, I might not be in a great place to carve out a complex answer. So, I asked my teachers to do a quick recap of where we left off last, and ask me a quick easy question to get started. Another example was related to how I use assistive technology. In AAC, we talk about the number of hits it takes to say something meaningful. Each letter counts as a hit, but if I use word prediction, it is less. So, I try to explain this to teachers who say that if I can reduce my motor demand to 1 to 2 hit answers, it saves my energy to make it through my day. If I am writing nonstop in first period, I am drained by fourth. When I react out of nowhere in fifth period, that fatigue and frustration may have been building since much earlier in the day when I did too much. So now, I ask my teachers to try to limit my long answers to really important points and give me a way to do quick check-ins with them so the flow in class is not so much work from my side. Here are a few examples of things.
That's it.
Those were really, really great suggestions. And if you y'all could like email those to me, I'll make sure they go out to the folks who attended, because yeah, those were really important. And I think, Grant, you know, your quote about, you know, my membership depends on if people are feeling nice, not on what I can actually bring. Like that is, like that just rings true, especially in my own life. Like I've learned that it's not up to me, like whether or not my autism is going to be a problem. It's really up to the neurotypicals and non-disabled people around me. And like, it's not at all easy to feel like powerless, like not knowing, am I going to be accepted when I walk into this space, or when I, you know, go to, you know, get my next job. Like there's just so much fear and terror. And yeah, I think it's important to consider like, you know, what experiences of like apprehension are, you know, non-speaking autistic children bringing with them into like treatment settings or into the classrooms, or even just in their relationships with others. So that was, yeah, that was a really great answer and really great advice. So thank you so much. DJ, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
If people don't know, they don't know, they think they know. Society's ignorance of their own ignorance costs non-speaking people their lives. Presumed incompetent and denied training in literacy and communication skills. Many non-speaking people are segregated in separate classes or schools for kids with disabilities. denied basic human rights, and later housed in sheltered workshops and larger residential placements. It is challenging but essential to change the societal assumptions that work systemically, and sometimes invisibly, to lower expectations and deny non-speaking people access to basic human rights, such as literacy-based education and the right to pattern our own lives. So hopeful folks, how can you help? Number 1. Don't speak for us. Computers and augmentative communication devices give alternative communicators a voice that is both easy for everyone to comprehend and efficient and sophisticated enough for us to convey complicated ideas in a timely manner. It allows us to shape the discussions we're having about our people as well as the world around us. Computers and text-to-speech software give us a voice to be heard by large groups of people, and each exchange is mutually beneficial. No longer isolated and dependent upon others to advocate for us, we are empowered to make a difference and to represent ourselves. That is self-efficacy. That is freedom in my estimation. Number 2. Listen to, hear, and read us. Ideally, the person themselves needs to be heard. If they're still learning, then read books by, and sponsor and attend presentations by, other alternatively communicating people. Be a discriminating viewer of media and film representations of us and help guide your friends, family, and colleagues to those that are fresh thinking. Be sure to explain why other depictions of us are simplistic, outright wrong, or harmful. See his recently released film entitled Music is Terrible. Check out Communication First's website, a new short film entitled Listen to Find Out Why. Nothing about us without us is a familiar and important disability rights adage, but remember, just because a film contains or centers on a real non-speaking person doesn't mean that person had any say in how they were represented. I love my documentary film to teach. Inclusion shouldn't be a lottery, but I worked hard to make it into the film it is. I'm hopeful my film will ask us all how we can help make the world less narrowly focused. You ask what kind of change we'd like to see in the world. I'm always speaking about this. As Goddess Sage says, your mind will always believe everything you tell it. Feed it hope. Feed it truth. Feed it love. We need to ask what all of us can do to create a field of diverse and interconnected beings and not the cultivated garden of a speech-based society. It's hard to say this in a quick soundbite, but you can find me talking at length about it at an NEH-funded series hosted by the Hastings Center in December. I end the presentation this way. We've all read about ecosystems unwittingly devastated by us humans removing some element, some being from its natural environment to quote-unquote, benefit the well-being of some other inhabitant. The pandemic has shed light on our common practice of doing this even to one another. The American and ableist ideals of self-reliance and independence cut us off from one another and position us as adversaries, vying for ownership over a scarcity of resources. What if, instead, we experienced ourselves as part of the intricate web of interdependence that is our ecosystem, acknowledging that we make the world a better place when each one of us has the freedom to breathe and to grow?
That was such a beautiful answer. It was it was literally poetry. It was wonderful. It was thought-provoking, and yeah, I'm still marinating on it a little. There's so much to think about. Yeah, but definitely, at the core of it, we're all connected. We're all a part of the same ecosystem, the same society, and separating us into, categories, and then, causing oppression based on those categories does not at all serve anyone. So yeah, thank you so much, Deej. That was wonderful. Oh, and Deej, DJ, if you could, you know, send me that answer after this, I'll definitely include it to those who weren't able to attend, because I think folks will get so much from that. So thank you. Celeste, I would love for you to finish this off.
It's always hard to go after DJ. That's such a good answer. So I would say one thing that I would want to there's so many things I want to change about the world. But in regards to this particular topic, one thing that I would want to change, I guess, is just believe people when they tell you their story and what they need. I feel like there's so many times where I talk to people as an autistic self-advocate, and a mom will tell me, well, you don't understand my son's experience, because my son, he bangs his head and he runs into traffic and he does all these dangerous things. And she doesn't realize that's shit I do too. Like, I bang my head and I run into traffic when I'm melting down and I don't realize what's going on. That's shit that I do too. That's also shit that people in my family do, but it's none of your business. And I don't tell you everything that my son does. I don't tell you everything that my husband does, because you don't have their consent to hear these stories. So a lot of times too, they'll just say, oh, well, your son must be different because you don't get it. My son isn't even potty trained. My son does this with his diaper and his penis. It's like, I don't need to know all that of what your son does with all this stuff. There has to be some sort of privacy and autonomy that we can get as autistic people, and still be able to say, and I need help. Just because I'm able to say I need help doesn't mean I have to now rip myself open and tell you how often I piss my pants, how often I bang my head, how often I've cut myself, how many times I felt like I shouldn't have to do that, but I do. Otherwise, you'll say that I'm not really that autistic. And even if you do believe me, the second you do believe me, you'll pity me, or you think that I shouldn't have a kid, or you worry about his safety now, and I lose all my autonomy. So that's one of the things that I wish that in just the, like, fuck the real world, man. People who even know anything about autism, us here in this group, we need to ditch the labels. It's too much, and it's hurting too many people. All it does when you say that someone is high functioning is I lose all services. And then when you tell me that my son is low functioning, he loses all autonomy. And it's not fair. There's no middle ground. And so if you want to help us, you got to trust us, and you have to believe us, and you have to care about us. You have to listen to us. Otherwise, you're just helping somebody's mom, which is great. I mean, if that's your cause, that you want to help people's moms, but if you want to help autistic people, you have to help autistic people.
Thank you. That is really real. You know, I think, you know, your answer has made me, you know, think about just like there is so much pain, there is so much like hopelessness that autistic people experience, and, you know, parents of autistic people also experience that, but it's so hard to have to sit with that when, you know, like when they share like such personal private details about their kids as an attempt to, you know, gain some sort of power and control over their lives and narratives, like, and like that shouldn't have to happen. You know, everyone should be supported in the way they need, including parents of autistic children. And it's still so hard to see what people say about their children sometimes. And, you know, what's even like the bigger tragedy is like thinking about, you know, it's not for the way I view it, it's not really their kid who's causing all of that pain and tragedy and harm. It's the fact that, like, hey, take Washington State, for example. We fund developmental disability services like 42nd out of 50th per capita. Like, that's really where the problem is. You know, it's the fact that, like, you know, your state hasn't provided you the support you need when you're in crisis situations. So you have to like go back and like describe all of the really like deficit-based situations you run into as a parent. And, you know, when you have that grief that hasn't been addressed, like it's so easy to get wrapped up. So I think, yeah, there's really a lot that needs to change, and I could go down that rabbit hole, but I also want to allow audience questions. So I know folks have been typing and questions into chat, and I believe Francis has been copying them down. So we will go to audience questions next. I will also ask for patience and understanding for DJ and Grant. They had the questions I asked ahead of time, but for these audience questions, they'll probably be able to answer them, but it might take them a while to type them. So, Celeste or, either DJ or Grant's parents might also step in and answer the questions while DJ and Grant are typing them. So yeah. Francis, do you have the questions ready?
Can everyone hear me? I'm good. First, I just want to say that there are so many positive comments in the chat box. And so I just want to say that people are loving this. The first question is, do you feel like the speaking autistic community voices concerns that are relevant to supporting non-traditionally speaking autistic people? And that was a question from Katrina. I wonder if it would be helpful for me to put a couple of questions in the chat box so that people can prepare answers.
Sure. Or see if they already have like something saved up that's similar. And I know we only have about 10 minutes left, so we'll definitely try to get through one of them or two of them as quick as possible.
This is the captioner. Is there a way for the voice-to-speech software to play back more slowly? I can't process the AAC device as quickly as I can a human voice. There's no ums or ahs. It goes much faster.
One thing we can do, if you want, is we can do the auto caption. We tested it earlier today and it was able to pick up things with a relatively high degree of accuracy.
Okay, yeah, that would be good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, testing auto transcription. Okay, it's working good. So can you repeat that first question, please, Francis?
Do you feel like the speaking autistic community voices concerns that are relevant to supporting non-traditionally speaking autistic people?
That's a good one. It's loaded.
Hi.
Can you hear that?
We can hear it, and it looks like it's being picked up as well by the transcription.
Go ahead.
So. Glad to be.
All right, you have to keep going. Try and put all that to the side. I know it's hard.
Here. And I think that all autistic people should
together. Dot. I am so glad to be here, and I think that all autistic people should stick together.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant. Do you have anything else you want to add? Or Larry and Cindy, do you have anything else you want to say on that? Because we did speak about this a little this week.
We did. Go ahead. I'll let him, since he started already.
And while he's typing that, Bella from in the chat said, I feel less support from the speaking autistic community. And I think, yeah, that is an important thing to recognize. Like speaking advocates absolutely do need to listen to voices of non-speakers.
Aye.
If you want to mute and go, you can mute and you can take GJ if GJ's ready and come back to us.
Yeah, sure. Or also Celeste, if you have anything you want to say, I know you'll have some thoughts as well.
I would say no, not at all. There's still there's still Asperger's supremacists in the autism community. So the speaking autistic community doesn't fully support the speaking autistic community, let alone the non-speaking. It's not there like you would think, right? But it's not there the way I wish it would be. There's a lot of times that I do like we get invited to events that are for autistic kids, but they did not think about how my son would participate. That really it's for autistic kids that are talking and just have can't make friends or something. It's not for autistic kids who have full sensory issues or who can't handle the lights or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing, I've noticed in my own activism is that, we as speaking autistic people, we really have to make a conscious effort to, uplift the voices of, non-speaking autistic advocates, especially when, we are given access to some of the decision-making places. And that doesn't always happen. And I do think...
I'd like to say that I do as an advocate, yeah. But I mean, is it for me to say?
Right.
I'm not, I mean, it would have to be, who knows, maybe my son would be like, nah, you could do a lot better.
True. It's real. DJ, do you have anything you want to add here, or Ralph?
Teach, do you want to go?
I think I'm open to most people and they to me. So sure, ASAN has been a supporter of my work since the beginning and have invited me to contribute in many ways. But our lives as non-speakers also has much in common with non-traditional speakers with other differences. In some ways, I relate more readily with deaf and motor impacted people.
And that's so important. Like the autistic community, as a culture we've gotten so many of our norms from, the deaf community, our preference for identity first, calling ourselves autistic versus people with autism. And yeah, that is, I'm so glad you brought up that connection. Thank you. Ralph, you're still unmuted. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm having so much fun listening to folks.
Cool. Yeah, I am as well, and I'm the one facilitating it, so it's great. All right, looks like Grant is still typing, and that's totally fine.
Zach, so I mean, you can kind of see he's been really calm through most of this. Now he's pretty dysregulated, but happy way.
Yeah.
I will add, I'm sorry, I'm not on camera at all tonight. But So I will add that and we did talk about this earlier, that the speaking autistic community.
Oh, it's totally okay.
I see it. I'm forgetting the original question.
Yeah, it's about whether the speaking autistic community supports the non-speakers well enough.
You know, our experience is that they do. We came from the DC area where ASON is, so we felt that there was always that. Okay, you need to settle down a bit. It's, I guess, when it's a complicated thing between some of the parent groups and the autistic speaking community. Yeah. And so we kind of feel like sometimes you see both sides of the fence. And so that can feel difficult to navigate sometimes, because it's not that we don't feel compassion for the parent communities and the people who are really in a state of crisis. And it's hard to watch them even when they're not saying things that we agree with. It's hard to watch that process unfold online. It's stressful.
Zach?
Yeah.
I just a really simple thing that we do in our house is there might be a day where there's no talking by anybody, and that what you need to ask speaking people to do is experience the business of not speaking, communicating in other ways, living in silence, slowing down, and adapting to another way of being. And you can discover as a speaking person that this is a glorious accommodation for you. Not for the non-speaking, but it can be that. But I think, you know, that wonderful movie, Wretches and Jabberers, those of us who speak are jabberers.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah, and Celeste, from what I remember, you and your family occasionally, like you'll only use AAC for like certain meals, similar to like what Ralph and his family will do, yeah? Oh, okay, you're typing out too.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, it's just about 8:30. And so, you know, I just wanted to say, like, this was such a amazing and wonderful panel, and it was so, you know, really so thought-provoking. And you know, there's so much to think about, and you know, I think we need to do a lot more of these. So yeah, just thank you all for being here. Thank you all to the panelists for putting all of your time and, you know, emotional energy and well-being for the benefit of those here. I think folks learned a lot, and I think that this panel will have a huge impact on the lives of, you know, speaking and non-speaking autistic children and their families. So yeah, thank you all so much. You know, over the next week or so, we're going to be, you know, making sure the transcription on this panel is accurate, and then we will send it out to, you know, everyone who attended, and then we'll also host it on the Arc of King County's website and potentially on like YouTube and all of that. So, you know, those who weren't here will get to watch this and listen and learn. So yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you all have a good night and take care of yourselves. And thank you all so much for the wonderful affirming comments and chat. Like, this was great. All right. Have a great night, everyone.